I'm Janice Hostegger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to My Weekly Marketing. These days, there are a lot of types of content out there. You can spend time making short or long-form videos or making a podcast like this one. So the question you might ask is this: is blogging still relevant as we go into 2026? I know for many of us, it seemed so 1990, right? Well, you're in the right place if you're wondering about this, because today we're talking about the future of blogging with content writer Alison Ver Halen. We're breaking down what's working in 2026, how to stand out in a world full of AI content, spoiler, by not letting AI write it for you, and how to turn your blog into a visibility engine that works even when you're off living your life. So grab your coffee and let's make blogging feel doable and, dare I say, kind of fun again. Here's my conversation with Alison. Hey, Alison, welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with the big question that I have. Is blogging still worth it going into 2026? Or
Absolutely.
has AI kind of taken over?
Yeah, well, AI is scraping information from blogs. So yes, it is important for traditional SEO. It is important for the chatbot. It is also important for the real live human to find their way to your website. Now it's all about getting the chatbot to mention your brand before they really start looking. And the only way to do that is to have that informational content for the earlier stages of the buyer journey, that top of the funnel information, so that when people are searching, what is this industry, or do I need to worry about XYZ, that they'll get that information from the chatbot, and the chatbots will hopefully actually mention your brand and say, yes, we got it from this website. It's also good for the real life people who actually find their way to your website. I think the biggest way that it has impacted my business, not only from the SEO perspective, but also if someone makes a referral for me and that potential client wants to know more about me before we hop on a call, they're going to go to my website and they're going to read some of my blogs and they're going to make sure I actually know what I'm talking about before we ever even have a conversation. So absolutely,
Right. Yeah. It certainly must be changed a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I've had experts on here that talk about, is it EO or
I
something?
hate all of that.
Yes. And of course, there's traditional SEO too. But
Well,
with the implementation of any kind of AI,
mhm.
it's going to be reading all the same things, right? So how do you stand out amongst all of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, the reason that drives me nuts, the new terminology, is because SEO just stands for search engine optimization. And
Mm-hmm.
just because the search engine is changing does not mean it's not still search engine optimization. It's just that now it's a little bit of a different search engine. First of all, Google does still own more than 80% of online search. So there's this idea that Google is dead or Google is dying. It's just not true. Whether or not Google will still be around in a few years, I'm not going to make any predictions either way. But at the end of the day, it is still SEO with and without Google. The one new one I like is AEO, which stands for Answer Engine Optimization, which that makes more sense to me because the way that AI is changing how people look for information, it's also changing the fact that people, they're not looking for a website anymore. They're not looking for a link. They're looking for an answer. And now they can not only get that answer without clicking through to a website, but they're interacting with that answer. Sometimes they're going to get an answer from ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and they're going to dive a little bit deeper and ask it more questions. Say, well, what about such and such? And what about this? And that is how they are diving deeper into the content. So if anything, I think having that long, in-depth content that really dives deep into a topic is more important than ever because that's how people are interacting. And again, if a chatbot can get all that information from your website, then it's going to prove to them that you're a really valuable resource that they can use to provide those answers to their clients. So yeah, it is changing. there is also a certain amount of, what's old is new again. There's still a lot. You got to create the high quality content. You got to answer questions people are asking. You have to know your ideal audience and the language that they're using. Because AI adapts to that too. AI, the more you use a chatbot, the more it's going to talk like you talk to it. So if you are using that language in your content, the chatbots will figure that out and start using you as a reference.
Right, right. And that's pretty exciting, actually, when you're not only seen as somebody who has a website, but you're also now seen as an industry expert when
Mm-hmm.
your content starts being used by AI. And of course, measuring that is a whole different conversation.
Yes.
And people are just starting to get into that a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you feel like now a lot of times people will blog and then they'll do social media. Do you feel like blogging has changed in priority? I mean, social media is getting harder and harder with
Mm-hmm.
changes to the algorithm. Do you feel like blogging has become more important or not, or feel like it's still the ideal visibility channel in 20 or going into 2026?
Yeah. So where I come from at this is because I saw years and years ago, the first time Facebook really changed their algorithm and made it a lot harder for people to get in front of the audience they've been building for years. And suddenly they couldn't get in front of them without paying. People literally lost their businesses overnight. So
Yeah.
that has always very strongly stuck with me. So I am always very much focused on blogging, focus on your website, build that foundation first, because that is the only content on the internet that you own, that no one else can mess with. No one else can just flip a switch and yank that away.
Right.
So that is why I always focus on creating content for your website first and foremost. And again, from an SEO perspective, everything should lead back to your website. But not to say you should not build an audience on social media. There is absolutely value in building that audience, increasing your visibility, and also engaging with the people who are already familiar with you and have gotten to know you. Make sure that you continue engaging with them and building that relationship and staying top of mind.
100%. 100%. So, what I see clients starting to do is go to AI and start generating content for their blogs, which I cringe at a little bit, but they're going to do it. I know they're going to do it because it's easier. And sometimes people say, I'm just not a good writer. It writes really well. But of course, it's generating it from existing content, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you write something that's really going to stand out and really, number one, make you a thought leader,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that's what you want to be? And number two, how do you make sure that it doesn't sound like it does set you apart, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, from anything that's written by AI?
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I hate the term AI generated because AI doesn't generate anything. It repurposes
Mm,
content
good
that
point.
humans have created and it just
Yeah.
regurgitates it for you and says, here, is this what you want? And yeah, the problem with that is it sounds really vanilla. It sounds like that everyone else has already said. Absolutely do not use ChatGPT or any of the other bots as like a keyword tool, which I've also heard of people doing. It's like, oh, I'll ask it, what I should write about. No, it's
Mm,
going to tell you what everyone else is already writing, and then you're just more white noise. So the way to get around that, if you are using it for your own to create content, have a really good idea of your brand voice. So I played around with this with Claude. That's my favorite AI tool, where I recorded myself talking about a topic and used AI to transcribe it, dumped the transcription into Claude and said, turn this into a blog post for me. And it still didn't sound like me. It still sounded
mm,
super
yeah.
generic. And I was like, really? So to get around that, first of all, I love that tactic of taking the content that comes straight out of your brain, right? Don't rely on it for ideas. It can help a little bit with idea generation, but I love using it as a brain dump. Just, I know I want to talk about this, but I don't quite know how to say it. But make sure you have your unique perspectives and your personal experience included in there, because that's how you're going to stand out. And that's how you're going to set yourself up as a thought leader. So make sure that's always included. And then make
Mhm.
sure you have a really clear idea of what your brand voice is. My problem that I ran into with Claude is probably that I had not trained Claude properly on my voice. And there are ways to do that. You can dump brand voice guidelines in there. if you have them. If you don't have them, yeah, dump a bunch of content in there that you wrote and say, this is my voice. From now on, when I want you to create content, created in this voice. You can also just, even when dumping that audio file in there, say, write me a blog post, make sure it's consistent with this voice and this tone.
Right. Yeah, that's what I did. I uploaded a whole bunch of stuff that I had written over several years, actually, and but you're right. It's not quite right. I
Yeah,
still have
it
to
can't
rework
quite get
it.
there. Yeah, it
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
requires editing. So, yeah,
Right. And then you always want to include personal stories, right? That really helps people get to know you as an individual as well as just you as a worker bee, right?
yeah. And that's always good content. I mean, for social media, for video, for blogs, you always want that story element in there because people relate to stories, we engage with stories, and we remember stories more than we remember the facts and figures and statistics.
Yeah, there's a saying in marketing, facts tell, stories sell. And
Yeah,
I always bring that back to
100%.
clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times clients are focused on the facts, which are important too. There are different types of buyers too that will just look at, they want to see the facts, or other people that just want to hear the story. You kind of include both for sure. So, how often should we be blogging? Like for a long time, it was like try and write a blog every week, or some
Mm-hmm.
people wrote a blog every day for a
Mm-hmm.
while. Is it adequate to write one just once a month, or is it often as you can make it happen? Or what are your views on that?
I would really say twice a month is the minimum. I think you can get away with once a month if you're intentional about it. And again, you are using it throughout social media and your newsletter and everything.
Mhm.
But I really recommend twice a month. That is what we see. Twice a month, if you're investing in that really long, in-depth content that Google loves, that gets really great results. And then repurpose it, make it into a video, make it into a podcast, break it up and then disseminate it on social media, share it in your newsletter. A lot of people get really overwhelmed with I have to blog a number of times. How am I going to do that? And create all this other content. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can say, this is our topic for the next 2 weeks, and then break it up and disseminate it. So yeah, every other week, if you're really intentional about it and you're creating that long, in-depth content, you can still get really good results from it.
Now, what if they are producing other content? Let's say they're doing a video every week or a podcast every week, like I am. Is it still necessary to create a blog on top of that?
I've been thinking about this with my own, because I'm thinking of starting a podcast, and I'm like, I don't know how much of this is realistic. Um, I do think there's value in switching off between a podcast and a blog, because you can turn that podcast episode into a blog. I have seen people transcribe it, and like I said, you can dump it in AI, or you can just publish the transcription, especially if it's like this, where you're interviewing someone. You know, maybe clean up the transcription a little bit, but
Yeah.
people will read it. And again, the bots love it. It gives them content. It's great.
Even a PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I have on mine as well. I find myself, if I see an interesting blog topic or I start listening to one, I'm sorry, podcast topic, I
Mm-hmm.
start listening to one and don't have time to finish it, I will run for the transcript to see, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of skim it and get the
Mm-hmm.
parts I really want to hear out of it. So,
Exactly.
uh,
Yeah. I know I'm a reader, so I'm biased, but yeah, I know I can read much more quickly. And that, like you said, you can skim it and get to the juicy
yeah,
parts and get on with your day.
yeah. So, what metrics are you really looking at? You're looking at, I would imagine, page views, right? For blogs. Yep. And do you include, I used to put in a lot of content upgrades, like little extras that if they are interested in the article and interested in the topic, then they'd
Mm.
get a free lead magnet or something like that. Although I will say that I would say things like that are less in demand now that people have access to AI, because
Mm.
if you don't need a checklist when you've got one
Mm-hmm.
at your fingertip, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we just have to rethink what our lead magnet is.
totally.
How can we continue to provide value in a way that's unique? And yeah, I've been going through that myself because my lead magnet is also a checklist and that needs to be rethought. Yeah.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Page view for sure. Traffic, where the traffic is coming from, because we are seeing more people getting traffic from ChatGPT, which is interesting. Um,
Mhm.
and also how long are they staying on the page? If your bounce rate is really high, that's a problem. So if they're sticking around and really engaging with the content, that we love. And then yeah, have a way to capture it, have a way to get their email or to follow you on social media or sign up for your webinar or whatever makes sense as that next step in the buyer journey. That's all of the stuff that I look at. It's also, I mean, the thing about content marketing is it can be such a long game. I know for myself, I've had clients where they run into me at an event or they hear me speak or they attend one of my webinars and then they just hang out on my newsletter for 6 months and then call me out of the blue and they're ready to hire me because they've gotten all of that content from me week after week for months. And that not only helped me stay top of mind, but it nurtured them as the lead and it educated them. So by the time we got on that call, I didn't have to go through all of the here's why I'm worth what I'm worth. I didn't have to try and convince them. My content had already done all of that. So that is a success story. And that's kind of hard to measure because that's the kind of thing you find on a sales call. But that is I think the best indication of just the value of what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's powerful, right? When people already know and trust you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did you get into blogging? I didn't really hear your story. I guess I didn't ask you at the beginning of the interview. So like, how did you get into all of this?
Yeah, I completely fell into it. So I did in college major in English and psychology, which turned out to be the perfect degree for what I'm doing. Little did I know. Had no idea what content marketing was. I thought I wanted to work in publishing. And the misfortune or the fortune, depending on how you look at it, to graduate in 2009, right after the job market crashed. So there were no jobs to be had in publishing or really anywhere else. So I answered phones for a few years, found myself between jobs at one point, and my roommate at the time, her dad, who was an attorney, was awesome and offered to give me stuff to do around his office until I got back on my feet. And one of the things he needed was someone to write blogs for his law firm. And he knew I had a strong writing background. So he offered me the gig and I was like, what? I can get paid to write? Seriously? Yeah, let's do that. So I jumped at that chance and started writing for him and then for an associate of his and then for some friends of mine. And it just kept growing from there. I did eventually get another day job, but again, it was just a turn job. So for as metrics go, that was my first success story. Was first client came back to me after 6 months and told me I had brought in $75,000 worth of business to his law firm.
Wow.
Just through the blog post I was writing. And that was my first light bulb moment of, oh, this is not just busy work he's giving me this as a favor to give me something to do. This is having real results for his business. So that was really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I talk about that. So I don't necessarily use a marketing funnel in with my clients or with my students. I talk about a trail because people will often it goes from awareness to consider, to compare, to evaluate, and so on. But part of what we put on our website, such as blog posts, really ties into that consider and compare stage where we're being compared to others in our industry. Before somebody does business, oftentimes they'll look around and see what other people are doing, but also in that consideration stage. And they may sit there for a very long time and they may leave. You're talking about earlier. And that's the thing about a funnel. The funnel is the idea of like, you just kind of put people in the top, they shoot out the bottom as customers. And it doesn't at all work that way. And I know personally, I have followed people and had to like unfollow them because it's like, okay, I can't deal with this right now in my business. It's just not time yet, but kept them in the back of my mind thinking when I get ready, I'm going to go back and buy from them. And I have. So I agree 100%. What you're saying is that putting that information out there makes it so much easier for people and it puts our expertise up to be shown.
Yeah, it positions you as a thought leader rather than a commodity. And people are willing to pay higher prices for that.
Yeah. Do you recommend that people go out a little further on blogs and not like, how do you get fresh information that's not something that everybody knows? What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot, especially in marketing, it's like there are best practices that I can regurgitate in blogs, but that's not what people are really looking for, I don't think, anymore. Would you agree? They're looking for something with an edge?
Yeah, I think people are always looking for best practices. I mean, there's always been new people who don't know what you and I have, like you said, embedded in our brains and can recite in our sleep. So yeah, in that respect, it always works. But on the other hand, especially these days, marketing is constantly changing. So write about the updates, write about how it's changing. Right. I think all of the questions that you are asking me here are good blog post topics. For me, I always go back to whatever people are asking me is something I'll write about. If someone has a question at a networking event or on a sales call, it's like, oh yeah, that is a good question. I bet that could be a blog post. Let's go ahead and write that. Because if people are asking me about it in real life, they're probably asking Google or one of the chatbots or whatever.
Hmm.
And for me, it's always going back to keyword research and Answer the Public is
Yes.
one of my favorite tools. So anyone listening not familiar with it, that's answerthepublic.com. Really great
Just going to
online.
recommend that. Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
going to recommend that one. Yeah.
you pump in a word or a phrase. I tend to put in one of my services or a category of services, and it will give you all of the questions across the internet that people are asking using that word or phrase.
Mm.
So I will pull out some good ideas from there, but then I always go back to my keyword research tool and make sure that it's actually a good tool. And if anyone is curious, that is SearchStat, SERPSPAT.com is my favorite keyword research tool.
Sorry, say it again. SERP.
SearchStat.com.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that one. So that sounds awesome. We
Yeah.
can put the link to that in the show notes too. But if you were going to place a bet, would you say that people will continue to blog beyond
Mm-hmm.
2026? Okay. That the
Yes,
written
for
word
sure.
is not going to go away and
No,
replaced by video and replaced by audio and all the things.
no,
It's going
I
to,
think it makes a great companion to video and audio.
hmm
And like you and I said, there are always going to be people who are like, just let me skim it. Just let me get to the good
yeah,
stuff.
the meat. So where can my listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, my website is AZ, as in my initials, Alison Ver Halen. That is azwritingservices.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Alison Ver Halen on there. And YouTube, Alison Ver Halen Content Marketer.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. This was always fun.
So, how do you think you will include blog posts as part of your content plan in 2026? Or maybe you won't at all. I'd love to know one way or another. So, shoot me a DM on Instagram at Janice Hostiger Marketing. For information about Alison or anything we talked about today, visit myweeklymarketing.com/136. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.